It is Monday, the 11th of March. Hello, kia ora, I'm Philip Duncan, and thanks for joining us. We're tracking a lot of high pressure coming out of the Tasman Sea area and sort of stopping at about that point. And so we're kind of on the edges of these high pressure zones. And that means we get a little bit of a cold front every now and then trying to come in, a bit of cloud on the western side, maybe a few showers, but mostly dry weather, cooler nights, and still fairly mild afternoons in many parts of New Zealand. In the tropics, we've got a few areas of low pressure, but the main area of low pressure mostly out here around the western side of Australia. So let's have a look at the cloud and precipitation. Here is that high pressure zone we just talked about. Let's fast forward the next 48 hours from this evening through to Wednesday evening, and it doesn't really move much. It stays over there, it kind of shrinks a bit, disappears a wee bit, but it's still connected to the next incoming high pressure belt. So really, no great change in our weather. Also, a cold front briefly moves up the country, starts tomorrow, gets up to the central part of New Zealand around Wednesday, but it's not much. A few showers, really that's about it, and more cloud as well. So temperature-wise, this is the departure from normal. So where you see blue, it's a little bit cooler than average, and where you see the orange, it's a little warmer. White, normal for this time of the year. So as you can see, as we go into this evening, bit of blue around the South Island, watch the next 48 hours, and it expands as that cold front comes in. Doesn't impact the North Island quite so much. By the time we get to Thursday evening, which is obviously a couple of days away, that cooler change comes through, but the usual areas, Nelson, Marlborough, Christchurch, and many other eastern areas, not necessarily feeling that cooler air so much, but certainly the further south of Christchurch you are, the cooler it will be, especially inland areas. So let's have a look at the next 24 hours. This is from Monday evening. As far as cloud is concerned, and the precipitation, you can see a couple of showers in here, but mostly cloudy and dry. And then by Tuesday evening, that's the cold front coming through with rain on the west coast and spilling over into parts of Southland and Otago. Also a couple of showers up here around Eastern Bay of Plenty. So Tuesday, you can see those showers sort of sticking around into Tuesday afternoon, and here is that cold front coming in towards Tuesday evening. So a windy westerly ahead of it, so temperatures will lift up a wee bit before that front comes on through, and then obviously it gets much cooler once that has passed on through. So by Wednesday, the leftovers of that cold front, hard to see, but as you saw before on the satellite imagery, leftovers of it look to be around the lower North Island, Cook Strait area as we get into Wednesday afternoon. Mostly dry then around the South Island and slightly cooler. Not necessarily majorly cold, just slightly cooler. And further to the north, it'll be probably more refreshing for some places. It's still quite warm in the northern part of New Zealand. Also low pressure zones to the north here. Remember the big news stories last week about how a cyclone or a huge deluge could be coming? Not from us, it was from others. This is the area up here. And as we said last week, high pressures zones around New Zealand and Tasmania and down south of Australia, they're going to continue to stream up into the Tasman Sea, and that completely stops the chances of these lows from coming down towards us. You need a break in the highs, and if you don't get that, they stay to the north. So as we get to Thursday, a little bit of wet weather comes into the North Island. Won't be much, but the North Island will be quite cloudy as we go through this week. Our new app actually has hourly cloud forecasts. So great if you're into stargazing or solar power. It gives you a better understanding as to what is likely to come over the week ahead. So you can find that in graph form and data form on our new app. So as you can see, Thursday, low pressure in the Southern Ocean here. By Friday, that sends up another cold front. The blue line means Friday will be colder down in Southland, Otago, maybe Canterbury later on into the day. And the wet weather moves up around the North Island. There's a small area of low pressure. So it's pretty patchy. You might see a lot of rain clouds towards the end of the week. Take a look at the chance of rain and just how much rain will fall. Because if you combine those, you might find it's only a few millimetres and not necessarily a high chance of getting it. And look what happens on Saturday. The next gigantic high pressure zone comes in and like a bulldozer pushes that whole system offshore. So yes, a little bit of wet weather lingers around the North Island on Saturday, and then it does start to move away. And you got a little bit of showery weather down here, a little brief cold front coming in around that high pressure belt, but generally speaking, that high firmly in control, and it moves in on Sunday with high pressure zones both sides of the country, which means a little bit of convergence in the middle. That's clouds that meet up. And so you might see a few showers, but southerlies on one side, east to northeast winds on the other for the North Island, and the South Island looks more so dominated by that west to southwest change. And again, the tropical lows up here that other news outlets were really talking about in a big way last week. They're not doing anything. So when you see those big headlines, come to us for a second opinion, if you like, to kind of see what we're saying. And if we're not talking about it, then chances are we don't see what they are talking about. And usually, 90% of the time, the reason why we won't talk about a low or a storm that's forming up here that might look a little interesting is because high pressure in this zone around New Zealand won't, allow it to come down towards us. So what's the point in talking about it? So we try to avoid doing that where we can. But obviously, if you see a whole line of low pressure zones, which you're seeing at the moment, that is newsworthy. But it's newsworthy for the tropical islands, northern parts of Australia. So for now, we are protected in New Zealand by high pressure, but the next gap in the high waiting over here. So maybe next week, there'll be another chance. Pretty much each week, there could be a chance to get something coming out of the tropics. But for now, we are looking very dry for the next week ahead in most places. That's all from me. We'll see you again tomorrow, Tuesday, for our next New Zealand update and also the Pacific update as well. We'll see you then.